Today, Rupert finds an unusual travelling machine and takes off in Rupert and the Unknown.
There's a little bear like you've never seen before, who's a lot of fun. Children everywhere grow to love him more and more. He's the #1. There's a million stories to be told of the things that he's done, and he's gonna share them all with you, so come along. Rupert, Rupert the Bear, everyone sing his name. Rupert, Rupert the Bear, everyone come and join in all of his games.
It's Mrs. Bear's sewing afternoon. It's very quiet indoors, and Rupert doesn't know what to do. He stares out of the window when suddenly he hears a most peculiar noise. What's that? I think it's coming from the common. Can I go and see? Yes, dear, says Mrs. Bear, but do be careful. But Rupert doesn't even hear her. He's too busy tracking down the noise. It seems to be all over the common. He stands very still, listening carefully. It's coming from behind that bush. Rupert peers over it cautiously. Lying on the ground and staring hard at him is a little man in a duffel coat. Rupert is most concerned. Are you hurt? Perhaps I can help you. The little man says nothing. Rupert tries again. Are you hurt? Please let me help you. But as the little man still makes no reply, he leans over to help him up. But to his surprise, the little man pushes him away and staggers to his feet, waving his arms towards the bush. What is he saying? But the little man is so dizzy. He sways and then clutches his head. Oh, my mother will look after you, he says reassuringly. Come home and rest for a while. I'm sure you'll feel better after a cup of tea. The little man goes reluctantly. Edward Trunk is hurrying towards them. What is that peculiar noise? He asks Rupert. And who's that peculiar little man you're holding? Asks the little man, which unknown to Rupert and Edward means, what is that boy doing with a sausage on the end of his nose? I found him under a bush on the common, Rupert explains. I think he's had a tumble, so I'm taking him home. I'll help, says Edward, and all three stagger up the garden path. Why, Rupert, who have you brought home this time? I don't know, but I think he must be hurt. Can you look after him? I'm sure he's left something important behind. Edward and I'll bring it back in my chariot. Mrs. Bear looks sympathetically at the little man. Now sit down and rest for a while, she says. Rupert looks down and sees a knob sticking out of the bush. What's that? He cries, leaping out of the chariot, and he seizes hold of it. Pull, Edward! Heave! There's a crashing of bushes, and Rupert and Edward fall backwards, holding the knob. We've got it halfway out, Edward. One more try. They both get up and drag it free of the bush. I wonder if it floats or flies, cries Rupert Bear in great surprise. Rupert is very curious. He's never seen anything like this before. We'd better take it back to the little man. Oh, you mean Mr. Ogg? How did you know his name? Rupert is astonished. I don't, says Edward. I just made it up. I must say it suits him, chuckles Rupert. They push and shove the machine until it's perched precariously on top of Rupert's chariot. If we sit inside the machine, I can just reach the controls, says Rupert, and they both climb in. The mast is crackling more than ever, And from somewhere inside the machine, they can hear ding, ding, ding. They're both so busy trying to find out what is making the noises that neither notices that the strange craft is taking off, leaving the chariot behind. How did that happen? Gasps Rupert.
Perhaps I can catch hold of a branch,
Says Edward.
Keep still. You'll have us both out.
The airship gains speed and height, and it's soon floating high over the countryside. Now they can see the sea far below. They're flying so fast and so high, it's cold. Rupert's ears are frozen, and so is Edward's trunk. All of a sudden, they're aware of a new note as the airship starts to descend. There's a castle ahead. The airship is flying straight towards it. Edward shouts,
We're going to crash!
There's a flash and silence. Rupert peers over the side. We haven't crashed at all. Look, those masts must be magnetic. But Edward just nods. He hasn't recovered yet. A door in the turret opens, and out runs a little man. He looks just like the little man they left behind, except that he's dressed all in black.
Why, it's another Mr. Ogg,
Cries Edward.
Please help us.
The second Mr. Ogg goes towards the knob and switches a switch on the turret beside it, and the airship floats gently down onto the balcony. I expect you're wondering what we're doing here, cries Rupert. But we tried to take the airship to the little man I found at home, and it flew away with us instead. But the second Mr. Ogg shakes his head. Which, unknown to Rupert, means, I can't understand even a quarter of a word you say. He beckons, and they both follow him through the turret door into a large room. Rupert and Edward just stop and stare. What are those machines doing there? The man in black just shakes his head, for he can't understand a word that's said.
What's the second Mr. Ogg going to do with us?
Whispers Edward. I don't understand, cries Rupert. Suddenly, to his astonishment, lights flash and buzzers buzz, and the machine booms.
You are English.
Yes, gasps Rupert. But how did you know? The machine clatters and buzzes. Rupert has never been so surprised in his life. Look, Edward, there's Nutwood, and there's my cottage, and Mummy, and the first Mr. Ogg I found. The little bear wants to ask another question. Can you get us home?
Yes,
Replies the machine.
but first you must have some tea. What would you like?
May we have a sandwich, please?
Rupert and Edward are delighted. They haven't had their tea like this before.
Please sit down and enjoy your tea
Booms the machine.
while I make some calculations for the return journey.
Edward and Rupert look around them. What a lot of machines there are. The second Mr. Ogg finishes his calculations. He beckons, and they return once more to the airship on the turret balcony.
Where's the second Mr. Ogg? Isn't he coming too?
Asks Edward apprehensively. There he is! Rupert is delighted. The airship rises gently into the air, and the crackling starts again. But Rupert and Edward are much happier this time, because Mr. Ogg has switched on a heater, and they're going home.
There's Nutwood!
Cries Edward happily. Mr. Ogg cries, running out of the cottage. Mrs. Bear is most relieved to see them both safe and sound. I'm glad that you're no longer lost. But where have you been? But when they look round to show her the airship, it's gone. And they can't tell her where they've been, because they don't know.
Rupert, Rupert the Bear, everyone sing his name. Rupert, Rupert the Bear, everyone come and join in all of his games. Rupert, Rupert the Bear, everyone come and join in all of his games.